Welcome to our webinar on Introduction to SCOR, the Supply Chain Operations Reference Model. I'm Melinda Spring, Director of Corporate Programs for APICS, and joining me for this presentation is Carolyn Lawrence, Director of Corporate Development for APICS. We are subject matter experts in the SCOR area and are happy to share this introduction with you. This becomes especially important now that all APICS members everywhere in the world have access to the SCOR model. For our introduction, we are going to cover these 4 topics. So our objectives include explore the origins and goals of the SCOR model, understand the basic structure of SCOR, overview the 4 central parts of the framework, and overview a SCOR improvement program. So first we'll talk about what is SCOR. SCOR is an acronym for Supply Chain Operations Reference Model. It was developed to assist businesses to understand, structure, and evaluate the performance of their supply chains. It was founded as a supply chain improvement methodology using process analytics, performance metrics, and best practices to improve supply chains by identifying performance gaps, guiding organizational change management, and providing the analysis needed to drive improvement programs to achieve increased levels of supply chain performance. The SCOR framework was developed in the early 1990s by a consulting firm, particularly Rabin, Todd, and McGrath, and AMR Research, with the assistance of individuals from corporations such as Bayer, Compaq, Procter & Gamble, Lockheed Martin, and others to develop a methodology to improve supply chain performance. In 1996, PRTM and AMR founded a user-based organization, the Supply Chain Council, starting with the original 69 corporations driving its inception. SCC managed SCOR for many hundreds of member companies, and by 2012, the initial SCOR framework had progressed through 11 revisions. In 2014, SCC merged with APICS. The SCOR method was integrated into APICS Operations Management Body of Knowledge framework and APICS certifications to provide optimized supply chain management knowledge, best practices, and performance. This brief history is important to show that SCOR is a tool created by and for practitioners to improve their supply chains. SCOR uses best practices arising from real-world examples and research and is not an academic exercise. SCOR is a living document. There are numerous committees and teams that are rethinking, developing, and researching information to continuously enhance the SCOR model. SCOR provides a single integrated approach to supply chain improvement. A goal of the SCOR framework is to assist supply chain management to solve business problems and improve processes and performance. SCOR attempts to accomplish this goal through 4 main techniques. First, to pursue continuous supply chain improvement by closely examining business processes and validating that they make sense. They are measured in SCOR terms to capture the as-is state and then to determine the desired to-be state. Second, to compare supply chain performance to other supply chains at all levels and benchmarking like-for-like measures. Third, to examine existing supply chain practices and identify practices and technology solutions that result in significantly better performance. SCOR provides an easy-to-use basis for analysis to ensure the existing supply chain is starting out at least even with competitors. Finally, the SCOR framework supports organizational design, engaged in continuous learning and skills enhancement, and focused on performance. The SCOR framework links process elements, metrics, practices, and the requirements on staff operating the processes in a unique format. The uniqueness of the Power of framework is chiefly derived from using these 4 elements together with a predefined relationship between processes. These predefined relationships are the result of research and collaboration in the development of SCOR. This graphic illustrates the level 1 processes of all APICS frameworks. SCOR is a part of this collection. These frameworks provide companies with a comprehensive set of tools to undertake supply chain improvements from several angles. These tools are individually selected based on the improvement objectives identified by supply chain management. Additional frameworks beyond SCOR include the DCOR model, Design Chain Operations Reference, which provides a unique framework that links business processes, metrics, practices, and features into a unified structure to support communication among design chain partners and to improve the effectiveness of the extended supply chain. SCOR is the Customer Chain Operations Reference, a unified structure to support communication among supply chain partners and to improve the effectiveness of supply chain management and related supply chain improvement activities. It provides a core set of high-level common business processes for the customer chain and a common language for the exchange of process knowledge and linking sales, operations, and customer support business processes. The PL Core, which is the Product Lifecycle Operations Reference, is a reference for innovation, product, and portfolio management. The model spans all product lifecycle activities from the first idea to broad adoption in the mass market. The model is intended to be industry independent and should apply to life cycles of both products and service offerings. Also not shown here, but the most recent framework is the M4SC model, Managing Supply Chain Performance. This reference model is for describing supply chain management processes, spanning activities from interpretation of business strategy to assigning critical supply chain resources. By describing supply chain management processes using process building blocks, the model can be used to identify and address critical supply chain management deficiencies. APICS provides SCOR practitioners with 3 reference sources to assist in learning and application. The SCOR model is the reference that contains the full detail of the SCOR reference framework and body of knowledge, and is available online as a PDF and as a paper-bound book that is distributed as part of the SCOR professional training or can be purchased separately. The model provides practitioners with the complete framework in 5 sections: performance, processes, practices, people, and special applications, including detail on the various levels and cross-references needed to construct a SCOR improvement program. The SCOR Quick Reference Guide, which is available online, provides practitioners with a digital version of an easy-to-use document containing a summary of the detail found in the model. The guide provides users with the ability to easily locate level 1, 2, and 3 processes and metrics for quick reference without consulting the full SCOR model framework. The SCOR mobile device app provides practitioners with high-level SCOR content directly on a mobile device for quick and easy reference, plus much more. The SCOR app is a greatly expanded version of the quick reference and easily accessible on your mobile device. Some of the key features include it's a free download available through the App Store and Google Play. Search for APICS SCOR. It's a powerful search option included by term, so you can search for anything in SCOR and find it with one touch. Level 1 and 2 process and metrics definitions are included. Level 1 and 2 metrics definitions and calculations are included. Level 3 lists for processes and metrics. Definitions for all emerging practices and a sampling of best and standard practices, definition of skills, and a sampling of experience and training lists. So advantages of using SCOR framework in summary. Scope of the SCOR framework applies to the entire supply chain. It orients supply chain improvements around standardization set of performance, process, practice, and skills metrics. Enables supply chain performance and practice benchmarking. Centers supply chain improvement efforts on creating value for customers. Applies detailed supply chain metrics to measure supply chain performance. Provides metric and activity alignment across organizational boundaries, and establishes a common repository of supply chain performance terms and tool sets.
So let's take a look at the SCOR model framework. The SCOR model is divided into 5 sections: performance, process, practices, people, and a special applications section. The performance section contains the standard metrics to describe the process performance and define strategic goals. The process section contains the standard descriptions of management processes and process relationships. The 6 major processes defined in SCOR are plan, source, make, deliver, return, and enable. The practices section contains management practices that produce significantly better process performance. The 3 major practices sections are emerging, leading, and best practices. The people section contains the standard definitions for skills required to perform supply chain processes. And special applications is a standalone portion, also called sustainable SCOR. And while not being interrelated to the 4 major sections, it consists of proposed global reporting initiatives environmental metrics with categories including materials used, percent recycled input materials, percent reclaimed input materials, and energy consumed. A unique feature about SCOR that sets it apart from most other supply chain improvement frameworks is not just its detailed list of processes, metrics, practices, and people skills, but how it combines all 4 and adds predefined relationships between processes in terms of material, information, and workflows. These predefined relationships are the result of the research and collaborative definition that all participants in SCOR development have contributed. The SCOR framework uses a precise nomenclature to describe each activity. Each of the 5 sections, performance, process, practices, people, and sustainable SCOR, has its own codification nomenclature. By viewing the alpha portion of the code, users can easily locate the activity in the reference model. The SCOR model provides a detailed description of all individual SCOR activities termed a SCOR table. Each SCOR table is given its own page in the SCOR model. For the most part, the table structure is the same. There can, however, be differences depending on the specific SCOR section and level of the table. A SCOR table, such as the one you see here, reads as follows. In the upper left-hand corner is the activity ID. This is the code ID for the SCOR table and defines which of the 5 sections you are looking at. Below that and to the right is the name, and that is the full name of the SCOR table. Below the SCOR table name is a full definition of the table. The definition will describe the nature of the table and provide examples of how that table is used. The next section is the metrics section. As a rule, almost all SCOR tables contain SCOR metrics from the Performance tab linked to the SCOR table. For example, the first metric on this table is RL.3.14, percent of product meeting specified environment performance requirements. As a rule, almost all SCOR tables also contain relevant SCOR metrics from the Practices tab linked to the SCOR table. For example, the Practices section on this table is BP.089, perfect pick put away. In addition, most SCOR tables contain the SCOR people skills and competencies from the People tab linked to the SCOR table. For example, the People section on this table is HS.0046, ERP systems. The SCOR processes table for level 2 and level 3 are accompanied by a graphical workflow that contains workflow input and output diagrams. These diagrams are found at the bottom of each table. These workflow diagrams represent a first pass at showing the graphical representation of standard flows and process steps associated with the SCOR table. Since actual supply chains and practices may require different sequences and flows, the diagrams in the SCOR processes section should be viewed as standard. On a typical SCOR graphic workflow, we would find the process ID for the SCOR table, which appears at the top right of the table. On the left-hand side of the diagram are the input SCOR tables used to work with the SCOR process table activity. Note that table SDR1, delivered return defective product, is a level 2 SCOR process table. The SCOR input tables can vary by industry and requirements. In the center are the next level steps needed to perform the table's process SCOR activity. In this graphic, the steps are all from the Level 3 table of SDR1. On the right-hand side of the diagram are the output score tables needed to perform the process. The score output tables can vary by industry and by requirement.
And next we will talk about the objectives of SCOR performance. To translate the business strategy to supply chain strategy, SCOR provides companies with the analytical tools to assess how their supply chain strategies are accomplishing the goals specified in the business plan. Measure supply chain performance. SCOR performance details the performance attributes and metrics that enable businesses to track the performance of individual business and supply chain processes. And SCOR performance provides a repository of performance metrics and formulas that planners can use to gauge the effectiveness of their processes. Understand relative performance compared to competitors. SCOR performance provides companies and their supply chains with a measuring stick by which they can compare their current performance with marketplace competitors. Identify and monitor processes that most likely cause the performance gaps, competitive benchmarking, and the expected performance of process key performance indicators to actual performance will highlight the gaps in performance and serve as a roadmap to continuous improvement to be pursued by businesses and their supply chains. It's important to define the various performance measurement terms used in the SCOR model. Performance attribute is a grouping or categorization of metrics used to express a specific strategy. In SCOR, an attribute itself cannot be measured. It is used to set strategic direction. Metrics are a standard for measurement of the performance of a supply chain or process. Metrics measure the ability of processes to achieve the strategic objectives associated with performance attributes. SCOR recognizes 3 levels of predefined metrics. Level 1 metrics are diagnostics for the overall health of the supply chain. These metrics are also known as strategic metrics and key performance indicators, or KPIs. Benchmarking level 1 metrics helps establish realistic targets to support strategic direction. Level 2 metrics serve as diagnostics for the level 1s, and the diagnostic relationship helps to identify the root cause or causes of a performance gap for a level 1 metric. Level 3 metrics serve as diagnostics for level 2 metrics. Process practice maturity is the measurement of process and practice effectiveness, follows widely used models for practice maturity, which compare actual practice to descriptive representations of different levels of process and practice adoption and implementation, generally follow a stages of maturity scale of 4 to 5 levels. SCOR performance provides diagnostic metrics to assist companies solve 2 essential conditions for effective supply chain management: monitor and diagnose overall supply chain health, and provide diagnostic relationships that enable gap analysis. Here are the SCOR performance attributes. Reliability is defined as the ability to perform tasks as required. Typical metrics for the reliability attribute include on time, the right quantity, the right quality. Reliability is a customer-focused attribute. Responsiveness, defined as the speed at which tasks are performed, and typical metrics for responsiveness include cycle time metrics. Responsiveness is a customer-focused attribute. Agility, defined as the ability of the organization to effectively respond to external influences and marketplace changes to gain or maintain a competitive advantage. Agility is a customer-focused attribute. Cost is the cost of operating supply chain processes. Typical costs include labor, material, and transportation costs. Cost is an internal focused attribute. Asset management efficiency, or simply assets, is defined as the ability of the supply chain to efficiently use its assets. Asset management strategies in a supply chain include inventory reduction and insourcing versus outsourcing. Example metrics include inventory days of supply and capacity utilization. Asset management efficiency is an internal focused attribute. And also note here that the SCOR performance attribute coding for each of the attributes is included, RL for reliability, etc. SCOR performance metrics consist of 3 levels, which are linked to the 5 performance attributes. These levels of performance metrics are industry neutral. Here we see the 5 performance attributes and their associated level 1 metrics. Level 1 metrics are known as strategic metrics or key performance indicators, KPIs. Note that each of the level 1 metrics are referenced back to their attribute through the use of the attribute SCOR code. The SCOR model decomposes the 10 level 1 performance metrics to include level 2 and level 3 performance metrics.
So let's turn our attention now to SCOR processes. There are 6 level 1 SCOR processes: plan, source, make, deliver, return, and enable. Plan processes describe the activities associated with developing plans to operate the supply chain. It includes the gathering of requirements, identifying available resources, balancing requirements and resources to determine planned capabilities as well as gaps in capabilities, and specifying actions to correct these gaps. Source processes describe the activities involved in scheduling product deliveries, receiving products, verifying products, transferring or moving products, and authorizing supplier payment. Make processes describe the activities associated with the conversion of materials or creation of content for services. It includes adding value to products through assembly, mixing, separating, forming, machining, and chemical processes. Deliver processes describe the activities associated with the creation, maintenance, and fulfillment of customer orders. Detail activities encompass the receipt, validation, and creation of the customer order, as well as scheduling order delivery, pick, pack, shipment, and invoicing. Return processes describe the activities associated with the reverse flow of goods. Activities encompass identification of returns, disposition decision-making, scheduling of the return, and shipment and receipt of the returned goods. Enable processes then describe the management of the supply chain. They include management of business rules, performance management, data management, resource management, facilities management, contract management, supply chain network management, regulatory compliance management, and risk management. SCOR processes are designed to assist companies in managing their supply chains. The overall strategic objective of the SCOR framework is to assist process improvement teams to first document the current business and supply chain environment, or the as-is state, and then to develop the future improved or to-be state. The value of the SCOR framework is realized when improvement teams are able to identify and quantify the gaps in service, cost, and inventory between the as-is and the desired to-be states of the business and supply chain. The to-be state processes, practices, and performance metrics are then prioritized into an enterprise improvement project. This visual illustrates the classic view of the 6 SCOR processes and supply chain management. A supply chain is defined as the integrated processes of plan, source, make, deliver, return, and enable, spanning from the supplier's supplier to the customer's customer. The supply chain is composed of your company at the center and tiers of suppliers and customers extending in either direction. To the immediate right of the company are first-tier customers that can be either internal or external. To the left are first-tier suppliers that, again, can be either internal or external. The model also displays a second tier illustrating suppliers and customers. In actuality, the SCOR framework represents more than one external tier, but only 2 are shown. The model spans all customer processes, all physical material transactions, and all market interactions. However, the SCOR process supply chain model does not attempt to describe every business process or activity. For example, it does not address sales and marketing, demand generation, product development, research and development, and some elements of post-delivery customer support. The descriptions of supply chains using the 6 SCOR processes as building blocks enable a description of supply chains that are very simple or very complex using a common set of definitions. As a result, different industries can be linked to describe the depth and breadth of virtually any supply chain and providing a basis for supply chain improvement for global programs as well as local programs. This is an example of several source processes modeled using SCOR. Sourcing is all about managing the inbound flow of material from vendors, including all the listed activities. As you can see from these examples, there are many different ways that companies manage the source or any process, and SCOR is flexible enough to be able to map them.
Next, we are going to cover SCOR practices. A practice is a unique way to configure a process or a set of processes. The uniqueness can be related to the automation of a process, a technology applied to a process, special skills applied to a process, a unique sequence for performing a process, or a unique method for distributing and connecting processes between organizations. SCOR practices have been designed to assist companies and their supply chains to perform tasks such as standardized processes. SCOR practices enable process improvement teams to effectively identify their existing processes and to use best practices to improve and standardize them. Identify alternative methods of operating the supply chain. SCOR repository of practices enables supply chain improvement teams to identify alternative practices for performing operations and enables supply chain improvement teams to generate a futures program list for ongoing reorganization of existing processes. And also they can formulate a list of undesired process configurations. So supply chain practices review can identify practices that actually impede high performance and that are actually destructive of operations efficiencies. This list can be prioritized and used as the starting point for an improvement program. Emerging practice is defined as the introduction of a new technology, knowledge, or radically different methods of organizing processes. So an emerging practice can cause an order of magnitude change in performance by redefining how a business operates and competes in the marketplace. Emerging practices may not be easy to adopt because of proprietary technology or special knowledge prevents wider adoption. Emerging practices generally have not been thoroughly tested, and they involve high risk but results in high performance and high profitability. Best practices are defined as practices that have had a proven and positive impact on supply chain performance. They are categorized as follows: current, which means not emerging and not obsolete; structured, they feature a clearly stated goal, scope, process, and procedure; proven, they've demonstrated in a working environment and linked to key metrics; repeatable, proven in multiple organizations and industries, will not yield the same performance results for all industries and supply chains; involves moderate risk and results in progressive performance. Then we have standard practices, which are defined as how a wide range of companies and supply chains have historically conducted operations. These provide good performance, but do not provide a significant cost or competitive advantage. They involve low risk and results in acceptable performance.
So now let's talk a little bit about the people section of SCOR. The people section of SCOR in the SCOR framework was added in SCOR version 10.0 and introduces standards for managing talent in your supply chain, as well as providing a set of standards for describing skills required to perform tasks and manage processes. It supports the SCOR performance, processes, and practices section of the SCOR framework with an integrated view of supply chain skills. The SCOR people section assists supply chain improvement teams in 4 ways. 1, It provides baseline skills necessary for the overall process area and for individual processes. 2, it also provides critical skills that differentiate leaders in a particular process area from those who only perform at a baseline level. 3, it provides performance measures through SCOR metrics that relate to continuous asset of job performance in each process area. And 4, it provides credentialing of supply chain skills, including training or certification programs related to the specific process area that tend to indicate superior job performance. SCOR people is composed of 3 commonly accepted elements: skills, experience, and training. Skill is the capacity to deliver predetermined results with minimal input of time and energy. An example of a skill would include such things as master scheduling, import-export regulations, production planning, and risk mitigation. Experience is the knowledge or ability acquired by observation or active participation. Experience is obtained by doing the work in a real-life environment and undergoing different situations that require different actions. Examples of experience would include things like cycle counting, cross-docking, and hazardous materials handling. Training is the development of a skill or type of a behavior through instruction. Examples of training would include the SCOR P endorsement training, formal education courses, and on-the-job training. SCOR people elements are related to SCOR performance processes and practices. Each skill is linked directly to SCOR processes. The skill linkages appear only on the level 3 SCOR processes. SCOR skills are not directly linked to performance, but are linked via the process, the SCOR level 3 processes. SCOR skills are linked to some, but not all of the SCOR practices. Experience and trainings are linked only to SCOR skills.
Now let's do a review of Sustainable SCOR. Sustainable SCOR is new in SCOR 12 and takes the place of the previously called Green SCOR. Sustainable SCOR provides a collection of proposed metrics to assist companies in their efforts to establish environmental sustainability guidelines. The pursuit of environmental sustainability models and audit metrics are a growing business concern in today's global environment. While there are multiple approaches to measuring the total environment footprint of an organization or a supply chain, the Global Reporting Initiative standards have emerged as the go-to standard for corporate sustainability. GRI standards are free to use and are available at www.globalreporting.org/standards. The Sustainable SCOR section introduces a set of strategic environmental metrics that effectively allow the SCOR model to be used as a framework for establishing environmental accounting. Only GRI metrics that are within the realm of supply chain management, sourcing, and managing the risk related to supply chain operations are included within the scope of the SCOR model. Sustainable SCOR is included in the separate Special Applications section and is not included yet with fully approved SCOR metrics. Here's a sample of Sustainable SCOR metrics. The metrics can be used for each of the SCOR level 3 processes and then aggregated to level 2 and level 1 processes. These metrics are readily available for most organizations that are measuring and reporting upon GRI material topics. Environmental agencies and industry associations have developed emission factors based on process throughput, energy consumption, and so on for calculating emissions. Alternate emissions values can be directly collected through monitoring programs or common documents such as regulatory reports, waste shipping documents, environmental permits, etc. By adding these metrics to the SCOR model, an organization can use the existing SCOR-based methods for defining supply chain scope and configuration. Once the process is complete, Sustainable SCOR metrics allow for targeted, structured data collection, and calculation of metrics, which ultimately provide a total view of supply chain environmental performance. Using the SCOR model as an environmental accounting and audit framework has additional benefits. First, the framework clearly ties the various emissions to the originating processes. This provides a structure for not just measuring performance, but identifying where action can be taken to improve performance. Second, the hierarchical nature of the SCOR model enables strategic environmental footprint goals to be easily translated to targets in specific activities. Likewise, when strategic goals are not being met, the framework provides a structure for root cause analysis as well as end-to-end supply chain optimization around environmental performance. Lastly, as with other SCOR model metrics, these metrics have clear definitions and a tie to process activities that provide a foundation for effective benchmarking. This capability allows companies to compare environmental performance of their supply chain using the same methods currently used for comparing business performance. Through benchmarking, companies can effectively understand the extent of the success of their sustainability efforts by comparing them to the performance of industry peers.
So while most of this presentation has been focused on exploring in detail the contents and navigation steps of the SCOR framework, we're going to switch gears now and look at the activities required to apply the SCOR framework to a supply chain improvement program. While the SCOR framework is a comprehensive repository of supply chain improvement building blocks, it does not attempt to prescribe how a particular organization should reconfigure its processes and tailor its systems and information flows in pursuit of high-performance strategic and operational supply chain structures and operations. Unlike Lean or Six Sigma, which contain detailed methodologies and full repositories of tool sets, the SCOR framework does not provide a methodology to guide improvement program teams as to how they are to use it in an improvement program. The reason for this is that SCOR focuses only on the evaluation of the supply chain and assumes that improvement teams already possess the needed implementation competencies. The SCOR improvement program introduces a 5-phased approach to initiating and managing a SCOR improvement program. The racetrack shown here is a high-level diagram describing the 5 phases necessary to identify, structure, conduct, and complete a SCOR improvement program. While the projects are linear by definition, SCOR supply chain improvement is never totally completed, and it is best conceived as a continuous cycle of detailed improvement projects. While the scope and objectives of individual projects will change, the SCOR framework provides a tailorable, standardized repository of performance metrics, processes, and best practices to guide improvement teams. SCOR implementation begins with identifying the improvement motivation, forming a SCOR improvement program organization, and delivery of SCOR education. After that, it's time to set the scope. Included in these activities are documenting the business environment, defining the scope of the supply chain involvement in the improvement program, summarizing the business context for supply chain improvement, documenting and prioritizing the supply chain, collection of initial supply chain data, and drafting the improvement program charter. This is followed by configuring the supply chain. By focusing on mapping the current state of the supply chain through analyzing both metric and process performance. Important activities during this phase include SCOR metric selection, detailed competitive requirements, benchmarking, and gap analysis. This phase provides the basis for the project portfolio and benefits calculation used in the next phase. Once we complete the analysis section, we move to the optimization section. Here, we focus on grouping performance gaps into projects, calculating a metric benefit for each project, and prioritizing the projects into implementation waves. The result is a portfolio of operational defects contained within each project, as well as the opportunities and benefits. We're now ready for implementation, and to implement with full confidence that we are implementing a program that will show a definite return on our investment. Activities in implementation center on implementing a single project in the portfolio. SCOR Level 4 processes are developed per the project's requirements. All process changes are then tested, piloted, and rolled out to the supply chain. Once completed, the improvement team selects the next project from the project portfolio, and a new improvement project cycle begins. So just what are the drivers behind using SCOR? In previous years, APICS surveyed our SCOR community to learn more about why they have chosen SCOR for their improvement efforts. We know, based on our analysis, that SCOR users have common motivations for embarking on their journey. Number one, achieving operational excellence, and number two, implementing supply chain performance improvements haven't changed in some time. However, organization and talent are trending up, and globalization and managing business processes are now new to the top 6. We also know from a 10-year span of research that SCOR users perform better than their competitors. This statement is corroborated with similar research done by both PwC and Gartner. The big number here is 3% to sales. This means that the portfolio developed during implementation has an average improvement in operating income value equivalent to 3% of the revenue analyzed for that supply chain. Or, for every $100 million in revenue in the supply chain, the average dollar value of savings is $3 million. Generally, half of that is in revenue related to improvements in reliability, responsiveness, and agility. The other half are typically cost and asset management reductions. The other trend is the first bullet in the second column. Using SCOR Level 4 blueprints as a starting point in any implementation can provide you a 30% faster and 30% more functional return and get you back to your performance level in half the time. We thought it would be interesting now to share a couple of case studies with you. These and others can be found on our APICS website. In 2002, McCormick & Company embarked on a 10-year journey to completely transform its supply chain. Through ongoing efforts to develop employees, align the organization, and continuously improve, McCormick has succeeded in building a globally coordinated and aligned supply chain group. As part of the 10-year initiative, 33 separate supply chain excellence projects were identified, funded, completed, and they spanned multiple divisions and countries. Each project informed the next, creating a layering effect for lessons learned, practical experience, and best practices. Central to the approach was APICS education and the SCOR model, which was used to align people, process, organization, and technology to create a global scorecard. McCormick applied APICS education and the SCOR model to align people, processes, organization, and then used that with their SAP Advanced Planning and Optimization application to implement a global S&OP process. The results were they built a global supply chain organization and leadership team and created a supply chain culture of continuous improvement. Next, let's discuss a little bit about one of our newer case studies, the Brazilian Post Office. The Brazilian Post Office is a state-owned company operating as the National Postal Service of Brazil. This organization faced mounting competition as it vied for business with private sector logistics firms who are more flexible and agile when responding to customer demands, typically at a lower cost. The goals of using SCOR were to modernize their logistics services while reducing cost. They wanted to adopt an international common process language for logistics across their organization and ultimately hope to reduce the number of warehouses used by their internal logistics operations. In order to do this, they trained 500 employees in SCOR and enacted process improvements, modernization technologies, and provided training for the labor force. They applied SCOR to optimize the logistics operations and used the SCOR supply chain modeling software to improve performance and process quality. The results were astounding. The company was able to identify cost savings of approximately $60 million annually in their internal logistics services. In addition, they were able to improve their order fulfillment cycle time by 25% and reduce their cost of goods sold by 12%. They also were able to increase their delivery accuracy by 25% and reduce their direct labor costs by 79% over 12 months. As a direct result of this, the Brazilian Post Office was offered the logistics contract for the most recent Olympics held in Rio de Janeiro. You can learn more about SCOR by attending one of our 3-day public training classes. Shown here are the ones that are being held in 2018 in the APICS Chicago office, or you can check out the APICS website for more options being provided by our global partners. APICS has recently added new benefits to the individual Core Plus membership. Included in that, as Melinda mentioned, is access to the SCOR framework, as well as other tools such as the digital library and manufacturing and distribution site-based benchmarks. For a full listing of member benefits, please visit the APICS website. Companies may wish to take advantage of special pricing for groups of individual members, as well as other corporate-only benefits shown here. For more information about a corporate membership with APICS, please contact APICS Corporate Development. At APICS, we get many questions on the use of the SCOR model for a supply chain organization. Some of the most frequently asked questions are, how do I get access to SCOR? If you are an APICS Plus member, you can gain access to the SCOR framework through your My APICS page by clicking on the Member Benefits tab. There you will be able to download SCOR and other frameworks. If you are not an APICS member, you can download the SCOR app for your smart device by searching for APICS SCOR on either Google Play or the Apple Store. Please note that the SCOR app is an abridged version of SCOR and includes definitions and calculations for Level 1 and Level 2 process and performance only. Question 2, how long does it take for my organization to implement SCOR? The answer is it depends on many factors: organization, data availability, and time commitment. As noted in the McCormick case study, SCOR implementation is a continuous improvement process. One trip around the SCOR racetrack typically takes most companies between 16 to 24 weeks. And finally, how can SCOR help me as an individual? SCOR is a proven common language for supply chain improvement. It will improve your ability to be able to communicate and improve your workspace both internally and externally. We thank you for joining us for the webinar today. If you have any additional questions or need any additional information, please feel free to reach out to either Melinda or myself, or you can email either memberservices@apics.org or corporatedevelopment@apics.org, and we'd be happy to meet with you one-on-one and give you additional information. Thank you very much for your attendance.